All right, next is vanishing point, and we're going to try to create an image that looks kind of like this one with our original image. Boy, sorry about that. And then we'll place an image over top of this banner at the top here. And we can do it with a picture, and we can do it with type. And so I'm going to attempt to do that as a demonstration for you now. Okay, so I'll start with the file that we've used once before for perspective, and it's the one that is called Graph Expo, and we've got that one. Okay, and I'm also going to use for the image on the face on the eyes on the banner. I'll use this image, the one that's called Windblown 3. Okay, so I'll open both of those, and the way this works is you have to copy part of this image and then place it into vanishing point on the other. So I'm going to do a little bit of work on this first. I'm going to rotate the image. Actually, it looks like the image is about right on this. The original image of this, she's tilted back, but you can straighten it like this, so you have the eyes that are more like straight across. And then with the marquee tool, grab a good size section of the picture, just because it's going to take that much image to go across that banner on the other image. So I'll copy this, copy, Command C. I'll go back to the Graph Expo image, and this is important. You don't have to do it this way, but I think it's better if you'll add a new layer above this image and put your new image on top. And so now that I've got that new layer, you can see over here. Okay. Then I'll go into my filter menu and pick vanishing point. Now there's some tools here as it takes you into this second window. There's some tools here that'll get you started. There is a create plane tool, and it works like this. It's just a click, click, and I'm kind of anticipating the shape up here at the top. Click, and see how it creates kind of a window for you. Now you can edit that too. In fact, it automatically jumps to the second tool, which is actually above, so that you can resize that if you need to. And the truth is, it's not a perfect parallelogram, so I'm going to make it a little bigger here at the top and maybe a little smaller here at the bottom. Not too much. I want to be sure to get that corner. Okay, but I can move this point and I can move this point. I would say, if anything, make it a little bigger than the banner, because we're going to kind of soften the corners as we go. And so just lay it in there. Now, one thing about this, as you adjust, if you should over adjust, you'll get a yellow, which means kind of like caution, your paste into image might not work. Okay, if you get red like that, it means it's not going to work. So you want to try to isolate an area that Photoshop sort of recognizes a plane, like it can see that perspective, and it kind of knows that it's likely that that's going to work. Okay, and so again, I'm just kind of resizing it here to see if I've got it just the way I want it, and looking for that blue grid. Then I'll paste, Command V, and my image comes in like this. Now be cautious here. As you move this image, as soon as you cross over into the perspective, it's going to jump to that perspective. So if you've got, let's say you draw something over here, and you also have a grid up here, if you accidentally drag across it, you're going to put it in the wrong spot. But I've only got one spot, so that makes it easy. You can see how it jumps to the perspective right away. Okay, now I've isolated on purpose an image that I knew was going to be big enough, and you can see that it's big enough to go to cover that whole space, just barely. Boy, I cut it pretty close. Okay, but I'm going to say that it's fitting in there like that. Okay, if you need to change that, you can move it off. You can use this tool, so transform tool, And you can resize the image below using the transform tool and these little handles. Now remember about this, if you have to make it bigger, you're probably going to make it look bad. So try to make sure that you copy an image that's plenty big, and then you won't have to do that. Okay, now I don't want to move that. Let me move this back into place. Okay, and it's just barely big enough. I'm actually going to cheat just a bit and make it just a tiny bit wider, simply because it doesn't look like it's quite going to stretch across there. Okay, I'm centering up her eyes so that it's on the middle of the panel there. Now I could stop right here and I'd have what you see right there, but there's some other tools that are kind of cool. There is a clone stamp tool, and it works like the clone stamp tool that you're familiar with. If you sample, say, off of her hair, you can move more hair over to here. You just have to kind of be careful how you do it so it sort of matches and looks natural. Okay, and I'm not doing a real great job here, so I'm going to do it twice. But if you want to fill in that back part with hair, you could kind of do the same thing over here, but again, you have to be careful. You can resample off of that part, and now you're moving this part of the hair. Okay, but truthfully, I think I'm just going to leave that alone. Now, there's a brush and an eyedropper too. It works kind of odd. You can pick off of this image. You can't pick down here because that's on a separate. Well, actually, it looks like it did take it. Okay, so correcting me again. This software has a way of doing that. I'm going to pick on that orange and then go back to my brush, and you can see that the brush is filled with orange. And so you can paint that. I haven't painted yet. I'm just running my brush over it. I have found that there are some settings here. There's something called just off for the paint. It says heal, and then there's luminance that seems to work really good, and then with it turned on, it kind of paints right over it, but doesn't stick. If you keep it on luminance, it'll paint it and it'll stick. The off kind of does a similar thing. It's more like painting directly on it. With luminance, it's more like an overlay of hue where the color kind of merges with the color below, which I really like better. Okay, but you can pick any color. You can pick off your image, evidently, or you can pick off your color picker and find a color that you like. I'll maybe go with a warm color here. I'll paint that in over her. You don't have to use the brush size that's given to you. You can. Look, you can resize it. That's the left bracket key, right bracket key. If you press Shift and right bracket, the paint edge gets hard. And if you press Shift and left bracket, you're using a nice soft brush. Okay, so whatever you prefer there. Okay, you can paint over it like that. I'm going to try to do something where I don't paint the whole thing here. Maybe something like that. Okay. Now, when you're finished with that, and let's see, yeah, there's a hand tool and a zoom tool and marquee tool that I haven't experimented a whole lot with. Oh, you can change the hardness of your brush right here as well, and the opacity. I think the default is more around 50. I've cut it back a little bit. Okay, so okay that. And now you can see the image pops right in. It's actually on a layer by itself, which I think is good, because there's a couple of things about it that I noticed right away. Is it's very pixely looking. Of course, I've got it zoomed in at this point. There's 100, and it still looks kind of pixely. You can do a couple of things. If you double click, you can go into your layer style and try adding another layer style, perhaps a bevel that seems to kind of minimize that jaggy look, or maybe something like a inner glow that kind of puts an extra, like a line around it. Okay, remember you can adjust those by clicking on the word and then getting a little bigger kind of a glow going. Wow, that actually looks pretty good. Okay, so whatever you like to do with this is fine. I think I might try the bevel. Okay, it doesn't get rid of all of it. So what I then do is I use the blur tool or even the smudge tool to kind of just smooth that out. The blur tool works. It takes maybe some added strength here, but if you see, it does kind of soften it a bit. Now I'm not doing it on a separate layer, I'm doing it on exactly the same layer. If you do click and shift, you can do it in long straight lines like that. You can see it has kind of an effect down here that you might not like. I'm going to undo that, maybe go to a smaller brush. I'll just click and shift and click, and you can see it's kind of smoothing it out. Then I'll keep my shift key down and go up here, got rid of all that. I'll go up to here with my shift key down, and you just got to be careful with it. If you don't like it, just undo. Yeah, I'm not real crazy about that. Maybe okay. And then click and shift, and you can kind of get rid of some of this stuff over here. Okay, it's kind of up to you how you want to do that. Smudge tool kind of does a slightly different thing, but might work. It smudges, okay, and you can just drag it across it, and it sort of smooths it out that way. You just have to be really careful with the smudge, because it'll go, you know, crazy if you go in the wrong direction. It'll pull the line out where it doesn't really look straight anymore. Okay, with a tiny brush and a shift key, you can do this. But see how it sort of moves everything? Now if you go back the opposite way, it sort of moves it back in place. So smudge might work actually kind of like that, but the smudge seems to do a pretty good job on that. Alright, now I need another copy of my background layer, and I didn't do them at the beginning, so I'll do it now. I'll just do Command J, Command J. I want 3 total. These two are together now. So I'm going to select this layer, Shift, and this layer, and I'll group those just so they are in a group together, easier to move, right? Okay, so I'll do, I'll rename this one Vanishing Point Image. Okay, all right, so I've got that one. Now I'm going to turn that one off. Okay, so I've got the whole group turned off. I'll go back down to this layer, and again I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, hopefully you're following along here. This is the one we just finished. Now I'm starting on a new one, and for this one I'm going to go back out. Well, I'm just going to stay in Photoshop, but I'm going to open up a new, Command N, a new file, and I really just, now I've got that kind of set at a size that I know will work. Let's see, it's about 7 inches wide. Okay, so that's a little bit of cheating, isn't it? I already had it ready to go. Okay, and then I just want to type here on this layer. So I'll just click, and all uppercase again, just because it fits nicely in a rectangle, and I'll type the name of the exhibit where this picture was taken. It's called Graph Expo, and obviously I've done that before too. It defaulted to a really bold sans serif face. You can use a different font. Okay, I'm going to click on my selection, my move tool, turn on the show transform controls, and I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'm going to hold my shift key down, not responding to the shift here. Let's undo that. Click and drag, and then shift. There we go, that's better. And I know that it happens to be that it needs to be about 7 inches wide, so I'm going to make it pretty close to that. Alright, now to just leave this as type doesn't work, and so there's an extra step in here. If you go to type, better commit first, okay, and then go to type and rasterize type layer, you'll see a difference over here in the layers. I'll just undo that, and then I'll redo that. It has turned the type into a pixel format. It's turned it into more like a photograph. Alright, so it's on a layer there by itself. It's good that it's on a transparent layer. I don't know if you noticed that when I zoomed in. It created a transparent layer. That's good. We don't want the white. We don't want the white. The white's on a separate layer. You can see what I mean. It's just, I'm just turning it off there. Now you do have to select it with the marquee tool. Why? Because it's like a photograph now. So I'm just going to select it. Right? In other words, what I mean when I say it's like a photograph, you can erase parts of it. You can, you know, you can do the things that you can do with a bitmap image. Okay, so I'm going to take that. I'm just going to copy it. Command C, Okay, then I'm going to go back to my Graph Expo image, and on that blank layer that we created, I'm going to select that. I'm going to go to my vanishing point. A lot of steps here. Okay, the grid is still up there for me. That's good. I'll paste the type in this time, and I'll just move the type into that grid area. As soon as the cursor hits the perspective area, the vanishing point area, it angles it so it fits perfectly. Okay, and the same things that we did on the other image you can do here. Let's see what the paintbrush is doing. I'll sample off of another color down here. I see this time it's not working, so take your pick. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'll just get a paint color this way. And I go back to my brush, and you can see the paint wanting to paint in there. Now, I don't really think I want to do that, so I'm probably not going to do that. The clone stamp tool probably doesn't have a lot of use here either. There's nothing to clone stamp, but those options are still there. Okay, so for now, kind of done with this. I'll just go ahead and OK it. And you can see the type pops in on top there. Now, it's kind of plain, not very exciting, but we can do the things we do with layer style, and you can try the bevel. Now it looks a little better. You can change the angle of the shadow on there using this little wheel. Remember to do that, click on the word bevel and emboss, and you can change the angle. Pretty nice. Okay, something that looks sort of natural maybe. Or if you don't have to use that, you could use a drop shadow. That also looks kind of nice. They might actually look okay together. Whatever you want to do on this is okay with me. Look, you can even change its overall color. If you click on the color overlay, you can change from the blending mode to something like this where it lets the orange show through. There's just so many ways you can treat it. I think I'll just put that back on normal. Okay, actually turn off the color overlay. Kind of like the orange. I think it's okay. Right, so I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, now you can also do some other things with this layer. You could do this with the first one that we did too. You can still change this layer into a blending mode, and this sometimes looks really good. I'll zoom out so you can see a little better. It submerges the type into the surface of the details below. Isn't that kind of neat? Okay, it's if you've noticed the other class putting tattoos on people's skin, it's kind of the same thing. Okay, and you can change the color and it'll keep part of the orange, and has the texture coming through. Isn't that kind of neat? All right, so I'd like for you to do one with type. I'd like for you to do one with an image. Now, you can take, since these two layers are together, I'll shift and select both those layers and group them. Command G, and you create a group that you can name. And I'll call this one the vanishing point type or text, something like that. Okay. All right. That kind of helps break this up when I go to put my images side by side. I'll expand my canvas just like we've done since the first day of class. Got a room for 3 this time, right? The rule of thirds grid that's up there to help photographers is really good for us here too. And I'll just click on that. Now you can select the vanishing point group, and you can move it across. And you can click on the Vanishing, that's supposed to say vanishing. Vanishing point. You can click on that layer and you can move it across. And that's how we use vanishing point for these. Now, before I just finish up here, I did want to mention that you can put more than one image on a file. There is a way that you can isolate other shapes, like maybe here and here. You'll just need to experiment with that when you go into the vanishing point window. Okay. Last thing to do then would just be to add your text. You know how to do that. Add text, original image, vanishing point with image, vanishing point with text, something like that. Right?